For more than 2.5 centuries, Japan lived through one of the most unusual periods in world history. After generations of brutal civil war, the country entered an age of peace, order, economic growth, and cultural brilliance. This was the Edo period, also called the Tokugawa period, lasting from the early 1600s until 1868. It was not a peaceful age because people suddenly became less ambitious or less violent. It was peaceful because the Tokugawa shogunate built a system designed to control almost every major source of disorder: rival warlords, armed samurai, foreign influence, social mobility, and even the movement of powerful families. The result was a society that could look calm on the surface while being held together by strict rules underneath. To understand the Edo period is to understand a paradox. Japan became stable by limiting freedom, became culturally rich while politically closed, and laid foundations for modern development while trying to preserve an older order. The Edo period grew out of the chaos of the Sengoku period, an age when Japan was divided among competing military lords. These daimyo controlled territories, raised armies, built castles, and fought constantly for survival and expansion. Central authority had weakened, and political power belonged to whoever could command soldiers and alliances. Tokugawa Ieyasu emerged from this violent world as one of its most patient and strategic figures. In 1600, he won the Battle of Sekigahara, a decisive conflict that gave him dominance over most of Japan. 3 years later, the emperor granted him the title of shogun, making him the country's supreme military ruler. The emperor still existed as a sacred and symbolic figure, but real power shifted to the Tokugawa family. Ieyasu understood that winning a battle was not enough. The challenge was to prevent another century of war from beginning the moment he died. Tokugawa Ieyasu's solution was to create a political structure that made rebellion difficult before it even started. Although he formally stepped down as shogun in favor of his son Hidetada, he continued to guide power from behind the scenes. This ensured a smooth transfer of authority and signaled that Tokugawa rule was not a temporary military dictatorship, but a hereditary regime. The final major threat came from Toyotomi Hideyori, son of Ieyasu's earlier rival. At the siege of Osaka in 1615, Tokugawa forces destroyed this last serious challenge. After that, large-scale warfare largely disappeared from Japan. The country remained divided into domains ruled by daimyo, but those lords now operated within a system controlled by Edo, the Tokugawa capital. The shogunate did not abolish local power. Instead, it trapped local power inside rules, obligations, surveillance, and ritual submission. One of the most effective control mechanisms was alternate attendance, known as senkinkotai. Daimyo were required to spend alternating years in Edo, and their families had to live there permanently. On paper, this looked like a ceremonial duty. In practice, it was political genius. A daimyo who spent much of his time traveling to and from Edo had less opportunity to plot rebellion at home. His family living in the capital functioned as a polite form of hostage system. The expensive processions also drained the wealth of regional lords, making it harder for them to fund independent armies. At the same time, these journeys helped build a national infrastructure of roads, inns, service towns, and commercial networks. So a policy designed for surveillance also stimulated travel, logistics, and economic integration. The Tokugawa state controlled its rivals by turning political obedience into an entire national routine. The Edo period also rested on a strict social order. Tokugawa ideology placed society into formal ranks, often described as samurai, peasants, artisans, and merchants. In theory, samurai stood at the top because they were the warrior administrators who served the ruling order. Peasants were highly valued because they produced rice, the foundation of taxation and status. Artisans made useful goods. Merchants ranked low in official moral thinking because they profited from exchange rather than production. But reality became more complicated over time. Samurai had prestige, but peace made their old battlefield role less necessary. Many became bureaucrats, teachers, or officials. Merchants had low status, but city life and commerce made many of them wealthy. This tension between official hierarchy and practical economic power became one of the defining pressures of Edo society. The samurai changed profoundly during the Edo period. In the age of civil war, they were professional fighters. In the Tokugawa peace, their swords remained symbols of authority, but most no longer spent their lives on battlefields. Many became administrators in domain governments, managing taxes, records, legal disputes, and local order. Because they were no longer constantly proving themselves through war, samurai identity became increasingly moral and philosophical. Ideas later associated with Bushido, the way of the warrior, were formalized in this environment. Loyalty, discipline, self-control, honor, and readiness for death became central ideals. But this was partly a response to redundancy. A warrior class in a peaceful society needed a reason to exist. The Edo period transformed samurai from battlefield elites into status-bearing servants of a bureaucratic order, preserving their prestige while changing their function. Foreign policy was another pillar of Tokugawa control. By 1639, the shogunate had imposed the policy later known as sakoku, often translated as national isolation. This did not mean Japan had no contact with the outside world at all, but contact was heavily restricted. Most foreigners were expelled, Christianity was suppressed, and trade was tightly controlled. The Dutch were permitted limited trade from the artificial island of Dejima in Nagasaki, while other carefully managed contacts existed through neighboring Asian channels. The purpose was not simple fear of foreigners. The shogunate worried that foreign religion, weapons, alliances, and trade networks could empower rebellious daimyo or undermine domestic order. By controlling the gates to the outside world, the Tokugawa government protected its internal political structure. Isolation was therefore not just a cultural choice. It was a security strategy. Peace changed Japan's economy. With fewer wars destroying fields and towns, agriculture became more productive, transportation improved, and cities expanded. Edo grew into one of the largest cities in the world. Osaka became a major commercial center, especially important for rice markets and finance. Kyoto remained a center of craft, refinement, and older courtly culture. Merchants prospered because a stable society needed distribution, credit, storage, entertainment, and consumer goods. Over time, merchant houses accumulated capital, experience, and networks that would later help shape Japan's modern business world, including the foundations of future conglomerates. Yet this economic growth created contradictions. The ruling order praised inherited status and agrarian production, while actual wealth increasingly flowed through commerce. The Edo period did not create modern capitalism outright, but it created habits of organization, urban consumption, and financial sophistication that mattered later. The culture of the Edo period was not only made by elites. A vibrant commoner culture emerged, especially in cities like Edo, Osaka, and Kyoto. Urban residents had money, leisure, and appetite for entertainment. Kabuki theater became a popular dramatic form full of stylized movement, music, emotional intensity, and celebrity actors. Ukiyo-e woodblock prints captured actors, courtesans, landscapes, city pleasures, and scenes from everyday life. The phrase Ukiyo originally carried Buddhist associations with the sorrowful floating world, but in Edo culture it came to suggest the fleeting pleasures of urban life. This culture was commercial, reproducible, and popular. Prints could circulate widely. Performers became famous. City audiences developed taste and fashion. In a society built on hierarchy, popular culture opened another kind of space, where commoners could see themselves, their desires, and their world reflected back with style. Education and thought also flourished under Tokugawa rule. Neo-Confucian philosophy became influential because it supported ideas the shogunate liked: hierarchy, duty, moral cultivation, and proper relationships between ruler and subject, parent and child, lord and retainer. This gave intellectual justification to social order. But education did more than reinforce obedience. Domain schools trained samurai administrators, while temple schools helped commoners learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. A literate population supported publishing, commerce, record-keeping, and cultural participation. Scholars also studied Japanese classics, medicine, astronomy, and Dutch learning through the limited window of foreign knowledge available at Nagasaki. So even in a restricted society, knowledge moved. The Tokugawa system tried to organize thought around stability, but literacy and learning slowly expanded the mental world of many Japanese people beyond what the rulers could fully control. The great strength of the Edo system was also its weakness. It was designed to preserve peace by freezing power relationships in place. For a long time, that worked remarkably well. But societies do not stop changing simply because a government wants them to. Merchants became richer than their official status suggested. Samurai often struggled financially because their stipends did not always match rising costs. Rural hardship, taxation problems, famine, and local unrest periodically exposed cracks in the order. The shogunate could manage many problems, but its legitimacy depended on appearing stable, competent, and unchallengeable. Meanwhile, the outside world was changing rapidly. Western powers were expanding across Asia with steamships, industrial weapons, and aggressive trade demands. Japan's controlled isolation had protected Tokugawa rule, but it also meant that when pressure arrived, the old system had limited room to adapt quickly. In 1853, United States Commodore Matthew Perry arrived with black ships and demanded that Japan open to trade. The shock was not simply diplomatic. It exposed a fundamental question: could the Tokugawa shogunate defend Japan in a world of industrial imperial powers? The forced opening began the Bakumatsu era, the final years of the shogunate. Political factions argued over whether to resist foreigners, expel them, learn from them, or overthrow the system that had failed to keep them away. The shogunate's authority weakened as domains, especially in western Japan, gained confidence and military capacity. What had once been a system for controlling daimyo now faced powerful domains acting with national ambition. Foreign pressure did not single-handedly destroy Tokugawa rule, but it accelerated internal tensions that had been building for decades. The question of survival became a question of transformation. The Edo period ended in 1868 with the Meiji Restoration and the Boshin War, which restored formal political authority to the emperor and dismantled Tokugawa rule. But the Edo period did not simply vanish. Its legacy shaped modern Japan in deep ways. The Tokugawa state had unified the country under long peace, expanded cities, encouraged literacy, developed roads and markets, and created administrative habits that later reformers could build upon. At the same time, its rigid hierarchy and controlled foreign relations showed the limits of trying to preserve order against historical change. The Meiji era would modernize Japan with astonishing speed, but it inherited a society already organized, educated, urbanized, and accustomed to national systems. The Edo period was not a pause before modern Japan. It was the disciplined, contradictory, culturally brilliant foundation from which modern Japan emerged. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.